In the small town of Blue Creek, life moved at a slow, predictable pace. People knew each other's names, exchanged pleasantries at the grocery store, and celebrated community events together. But like any small town, Blue Creek had its share of secrets, some of which went unnoticed until the day they came bursting into the open. One of those secrets began unraveling when Sheriff Tom Grady, a man known for his stoic presence and no-nonsense attitude, discovered something that would shake him to his core. It all started one quiet, cold night. Sheriff Tom Grady had been the law in Blue Creek for over 20 years. With his weathered face, a few silver hairs poking out from under his hat, and a frame hardened by years of work, he commanded respect. He knew the town like the back of his hand, and in his years on the job, he'd seen everything from bar brawls to lost pets, but rarely anything more serious. One late autumn night, as he was making his usual rounds, he noticed something unusual at the local laundromat. The building was old, with flickering fluorescent lights and scratched-up machines, a place that was mostly empty after sundown. But through the window, Sheriff Grady saw the figure of a young girl, no older than 14, sitting alone on one of the benches inside, watching the machines turn. She was wearing an oversized hoodie and holding a small tattered bag in her lap. It wasn't unheard of for people to do laundry late, but something about her caught his attention. Her shoulders were slouched, her head down. She looked tired, as if the weight of the world was pressing down on her. Curious, he parked his patrol car across the street and watched her for a few minutes. She sat there quietly, occasionally glancing at the door as if waiting for someone, but nobody came. After a while, she gathered up a load of clothes from one of the machines, folded them carefully, and packed them into her bag. Then she left the laundromat, disappearing into the shadows of the night. The next night, Sheriff Grady noticed her again. Same time, same place, doing laundry by herself. She was quiet, solitary, almost ghost-like in her stillness. He made a mental note to ask around about her, but with no immediate signs of trouble, he let it slide. But the third night, when he saw her yet again, his curiosity turned into concern. Who was this girl? Why was she here every night, alone in a laundromat? She didn't look like any of the kids he knew from the local high school, and he hadn't seen her around town before. Unable to shake his worry, he decided to approach her. As he walked into the laundromat, the girl looked up, startled. She clutched her bag tightly, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and defensiveness. "Hey there," Sheriff Grady said gently, trying not to intimidate her. "Don't mean to scare you. I'm Sheriff Grady. I just noticed you've been coming here every night. Are you all right?" The girl stared at him for a moment, her lips pressed together as if trying to decide whether or not to trust him. Finally, she nodded, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I'm fine," she mumbled, barely loud enough for him to hear. "You've got a name?" he asked, keeping his tone soft. She hesitated before answering. "My name's Maya." "Well, Maya, it's pretty late to be doing laundry. You got folks at home who know you're here?" She bit her lip and looked away, avoiding his question. Sheriff Grady's heart sank. He recognized that look, the guarded, distant stare of a child carrying a burden too heavy for her shoulders. "If you need any help, you can talk to me," he said, hoping to reassure her. "I'm here to make sure folks are safe." She nodded again, but said nothing more. After a few moments of uncomfortable silence, he gave her a small smile and left the laundromat, deciding he'd investigate further on his own. Over the next few days, Sheriff Grady made discreet inquiries around town, asking if anyone knew a young girl named Maya. But no one seemed to know her. She wasn't enrolled in the local schools, and no one recalled seeing her family around. It was as if she had appeared out of nowhere. Determined to get to the bottom of it, he began driving past the laundromat every night. Without fail, she was there, silently folding clothes or staring at the spinning machines with an expression that seemed too old for her age. One night, he noticed something different. As Maya exited the laundromat with her bag slung over her shoulder, she didn't head toward the residential part of town. Instead, she walked down a poorly lit street on the outskirts of town, disappearing into the shadows near an abandoned warehouse. Alarmed, Sheriff Grady parked his car and followed her at a distance. As he rounded the corner, he saw her slip into the warehouse through a broken side door. He knew he had to act. Flashlight in hand, he cautiously entered the building, his steps echoing in the silence. The place smelled of damp concrete and rust. Piles of old boxes and broken machinery cluttered the floor. As he ventured deeper into the warehouse, he heard faint rustling. Turning a corner, he shone his flashlight ahead, and what he saw made his heart sink. In a makeshift shelter of blankets and old cardboard, Maya was huddled in a small corner of the warehouse. Her bag of laundry lay beside her, along with a few belongings: a torn blanket, a flashlight, and a couple of old, worn-out books. She was trying to eat a small sandwich, but it was clear she hadn't had a proper meal in a while. Her face was pale, her cheeks sunken, and her hands trembled as she held her food. "Maya?" Sheriff Grady said softly, lowering his flashlight. She looked up, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and shame. "Please," she whispered, "don't take me away. I don't have anywhere else to go." Sheriff Grady felt a lump in his throat. This young girl, barely in her teens, was living alone in an abandoned warehouse, struggling to survive each day. He crouched down, trying to meet her gaze. "Maya, what happened? Where's your family?" Her eyes filled with tears, and she quickly looked away. "My mom, she passed away a few months ago. It was just the two of us. After she was gone, I didn't have anywhere to go. I don't have any other family. I didn't want to go to a shelter. I was scared they'd send me to a foster home." Sheriff Grady's heart broke as he listened to her story. She had been living here, alone and frightened, doing her best to blend into the background, hoping no one would notice her. "You don't have to live like this, Maya," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I can help you. We'll find you a safe place with people who care about you. You don't have to be alone anymore." She shook her head, clutching her bag. "I don't want to go into foster care. I want to be left alone." He took a deep breath, trying to hold back his own tears. "Maya, there are people who can help. People who want to help. You deserve to feel safe, to have a warm bed, food to eat. You don't have to do this by yourself." After a long, tearful conversation, Sheriff Grady finally convinced Maya to let him help her. The next day, he reached out to the town's social services and explained the situation. Although it took some time and effort, they managed to find a kind woman named Rachel, who was known for taking in children in need. Rachel had a warm home on the outskirts of town and a history of fostering children who had nowhere else to go. Sheriff Grady introduced Maya to Rachel, who welcomed her with open arms. Although hesitant at first, Maya slowly began to open up. Rachel provided her with a warm bed, proper meals, and a comforting presence she hadn't felt in months. Sheriff Grady visited often, checking in on her progress. Over time, he watched as Maya's health improved, her cheeks filled out, and her smile returned. Rachel helped her get back into school, and for the first time since her mother's passing, Maya began to dream of a future. News of Maya's story spread through Blue Creek, touching the hearts of the townspeople. The laundromat owner, upon hearing about her struggles, set up a small donation box to help cover Maya's expenses, and the community began donating food, clothing, and school supplies. Local businesses pitched in to ensure she had everything she needed to feel comfortable and loved. A few weeks after Maya moved in with Rachel, Sheriff Grady was honored at a town hall meeting for his compassion and dedication. But when he was called up to speak, he waved off the praise, his voice choked with emotion. "It wasn't just me," he said, glancing at Maya, who was sitting in the front row, smiling up at him with gratitude in her eyes. It was all of us. It's people like Rachel and everyone in this town who make Blue Creek a place worth calling home. Maya reminded us of what it means to care for one another, and that's something I'll never forget. Maya stood and walked up to Sheriff Grady, wrapping him in a hug that spoke louder than any words. He felt his own tears well up, letting them fall as he held her tightly. Months passed, and Maya settled into her new life. She thrived under Rachel's care, making friends at school, excelling in her studies, and finding happiness in the little things again. She often visited the laundromat, but now it was different. She no longer came in under the cover of darkness. Instead, she greeted the owner with a smile, washed her clothes in the daylight, and left with a wave to anyone who recognized her. Sheriff Grady continued to check in on her, watching with pride as she blossomed. Her resilience and courage inspired him, and their bond became something akin to family. They had both come a long way from that fateful night in the laundromat. As spring arrived in Blue Creek, the town saw new life, new growth. Flowers bloomed in the park, families gathered at local events, and the warmth of community spirit spread like wildfire. And there, in the heart of it all, was Maya, a young girl who had once been invisible, hidden in the shadows, but who had found a new life, a new family, and a new hope. The girl who had been a ghost in the laundromat was now a cherished member of Blue Creek, her story a reminder of the power of compassion and the strength of a community that truly cared. The story of Maya and Sheriff Grady serves as a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the importance of looking beyond the surface. In a world where people often pass by without noticing, it's the small acts of kindness and compassion that make all the difference. Through her journey, Maya found a family, a home, and a future, and all because someone cared enough to ask, to help, and to believe in her.